Welcome to this video introducing Richard Leach's newest collection, Soul Becomes a Song. I'm David Scott, president and founder of Selah Publishing Company and Richard's publisher for over 25 years. Richard always has something important to say to us, and his hymns have found their way around the world. I'm delighted you had the chance to experience some of his new texts and a few older texts in this collection with tunes that cover a wide variety of styles, and I'm sure you'll find many of these useful in your churches. We'd rather be with you in person, but this will at least give you a taste of what's in this new book.
Greetings from Stamford, Connecticut. I'm here to introduce a new collection of my hymns from Selah Publishing Company. The title of the collection is Soul Becomes a Song, with the subtitle New and Selected Hymns. When I began the project last year, I called it Every Breath is Heaven's Gift. That was the working title, and that is the name of this sectional in the Hymn Society's summer conference program. But the final title is Soul Becomes a Song. The music is by 9 different composers, Hymn Society members and friends of long standing. Every breath is heaven's gift is a phrase from a hymn I wrote in June of 2019, and that is the hymn I will introduce first. David Ashley White is a professor at the Moores School of Music at the University of Houston. He and I have been friends for many years and collaborated many times. Usually that has begun with a text of mine that David writes music for. But in June of last year, David came up with a tune and sent it to me, requesting words for it. The tune had a certain feeling, and David had some ideas about how the words should go. He said he thought they should be quiet, mystical, perhaps full of allusions. That's allusions with an A. And so the text I wrote has many. The opening line, "Our every breath is heaven's gift," was partly stolen from the title of last year's Hymn Society conference in Dallas, "Every breath is borrowed air." The middle stanza alludes to Psalm 30, which speaks of weeping that fills the night and joy that comes in the morning. The closing stanza is from Romans chapter 8, where Paul says that we do not even know how to pray as we ought, but that the Spirit intercedes for us with sighs too deep for words. And that stanza will also remind us of some words of Julian of Norwich. Let's listen to the hymn now. As Her Soul Becomes a Song is our next hymn. I wrote it early this year in the Epiphany season. I was thinking about the Magnificat, in which Mary says, God has put down the mighty from their thrones. And the phrase, in the midst of toppled thrones, came to me. The mighty deposed and their thrones knocked over by holy initiative. We can imagine Mary standing singing for joy with overthrown rulers and powers all around her. We had sung What Wondrous Love at my church at about the same time as that image came to me, and I heard in the midst of toppled thrones to the tune of Wondrous Love, which it almost fits but not quite. So I borrowed and adapted the Wondrous Love structure to create the hymn. The toppled thrones appear in the second stanza. And Mary's opening line, my soul magnifies the Lord, became, as her soul becomes a song, to begin the hymn. The closing stanza invites us to make Mary's song our own. I gave the text to Amanda Husberg and to Andrew Donaldson. Both of them wrote strong settings, and both are included in this book. We'll hear Andrew and Wendy Donaldson perform Andrew's music now, and we'll hear Amanda's later on.
Both the words and the music of As Her Soul Becomes a Song are in Southern harmony style. Mary sings in the midst of a world upended, and as she sings, her song becomes our own. As her soul becomes a song,
Mary sings, Mary sings.
as her soul becomes a song,
Mary sings.
to praise the Holy One for blessing that has come. As her soul becomes a song,
Mary sings.
in the midst of toppled thrones,
Mary sings, Mary sings.
in the midst of toppled thrones,
Mary sings.
as the mighty learn defeat and beg for food to eat, in the midst of toppled thrones,
Mary sings.
as her song becomes our own, let us sing, let us sing, as her song becomes our own, let us sing. From Mary's lifted voice, learn freedom to rejoice, as her song becomes our own, let us sing.
Speaking of the fate of those who sit on thrones, Psalm 149 is in the Revised Common Lectionary twice and has some notorious lines on that subject. The psalm calls on God's people to praise God with singing and dancing, and then it says, let the high praises of God be in their throats and two-edged swords in their hands, to execute vengeance on the nations and punishment on the peoples, to bind their kings with fetters and their nobles with chains of iron. Praises of God in their throats and swords in their hands to bind their kings and nobles. How and why should we sing that? I suggest that when people sit up and take notice, and find that those who are in charge of the world do not have good intentions toward most of the inhabitants of the world, this might be a useful song. It is not a psalm to sing when we find that we ourselves are in the position of kings and nobles, keeping others down, which sometimes we are. To my mind, it is a psalm to be sung from way down low, not from way up high. With all that in mind, I wrote a paraphrase of Psalm 149. My first thought was that if we were singing of putting powerful people in chains, we might wish to begin by singing softly, so that we did not upset the powerful ones too much, at least not at first. But the song will not stay soft. The call of Psalm 149 to dance became the hymn's refrain. And in the second stanza, I followed Isaac Watts's example and brought Christ into the text. Andrew Donaldson set the text to music. He began with the refrain, the invitation to the dance of praise. Then comes stanza 1, whose first couplet is, "Sing it softly, kings and nobles will not like the song we sing." Andrew and Wendy will perform it for us now.
And the dance of praise grows wider, and its circle welcomes you. In our praises is the pattern for all things to be made new. Sing it softly, kings and nobles will not like the song we sing. Sing it boldly, our Creator is our one and only King. And the dance of praise grows wider, and its circle welcomes you. In our praises is the pattern for all things to be made new. Sing it boldly, God was victor when our life was crucified. Sing it gladly, human rulers did their worst and were defied. And the dance of praise grows wider, and its circle welcomes you. In our praises is the pattern for all things to be made new. Sing it boldly, sing of justice, binding even kings in chains. Sing it truly past all other. Holy love is all that reigns. And the dance of praise grows wider, and its circle welcomes you. In our praises is the pattern for all things to be made new.
There are many psalm versions in this new book, some of them newly written and some older. Psalms are immediately appealing, yet they also have a depth that one can go to time and time again. A psalm is cold water when you are thirsty, and it is also a deep well from which more may be drawn. I've written many psalm paraphrases and psalm-based hymns, and many versions of particular psalms. One psalm that I've only worked with once for congregational song is Psalm 8. It is the familiar psalm that begins, "O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth." My paraphrase of it is called Over the Waves of Words. I wrote it in the early 1990s, and it was the title piece of my first words and music collection from Selah Publishing in 1996. Besides new work in this book, I am representing some pieces in the same form in which they were first published, to give them and the collections they came from a new hearing and a new chance to be sung. This is one of them. It is a paraphrase that is both careful and free. The conceit of the opening lines is that all of human talk and verbiage is a great sea, and above that sea's waves is the name of God, which in the very old tradition is too holy to be spoken. On a day at the ocean which is both sunny and windy, sometimes you will see a rainbow in the spray of a breaking wave. In the hymn's first stanza, such a rainbow becomes an image for God's holy name above the sea of all our words.
Over the waves of words, rising and rushing, crashing and foaming like rough seas at play. Your name, O Lord our God, holy unspoken, looks like a rainbow that shines in the spring. Lord, from the praises of children and babies, you raise a shelter to still people, welcoming us into life-giving quiet. Gathered before you, we sing what we know. Sun, moon, and stars give you praise with their silence. Angels adore you with bright skies of sound. Yet you esteem us much better and noble. Over the bird, beast, and fish we are crowned. Lifted up high that your praise may resound. Alleluia, alleluia.
Another hymn I'm bringing back from that 1996 book is Rise My Song and Stretch Your Wings. This text was inspired by an 18th century hymn by Robert Seagrave. The title was Rise My Soul and Stretch Thy Wings. And these are the opening lines of that one. Rise, my soul, and stretch thy wings, thy better portion trace. Rise from transitory things toward heaven, thy destined place. I liked the images of rising and flight, but I wanted a hymn focused on this world rather than on departing from it. So I changed the soul, which is called to rise, to a song. And I pictured the song as a falcon and Jesus as the falconer who sets it free to fly and waits below for it to return. Al Fedak did a marvelous setting of my words, and it is in print as an anthem called The Falconer, as well as a hymn. There are several church choir versions available on YouTube. I will read you the first stanza, and then we will hear the whole hymn from Al Fedak and Susan Fedak. Rise, my song, and stretch your wings, delight and need to trace. Rise for those the gospel brings to seek a singing place. This will be our singing day. Word and tune will both be true. Song soar up, but not away. The falconer waits for you.
Hello, my name is Al Fedak. About 25 years ago, I was contacted by Third Reformed Church in Holland, Michigan, with a request to compose a choral anthem in memory of one of the church's choir members, a young man who had tragically taken his own life. The news of his death shocked me. Although I didn't know him personally, we had both been students together at Hope College and had several friends in common. At about the same time, I had come across Richard Leach's wonderful hymn text, Rise My Song and Stretch Your Wings, which takes as its point of departure Robert Seagrave's 18th century hymn, Rise My Soul and Stretch Your Wings. I was immediately drawn to Richard's poem because I was already familiar with the Seagrave text and because I found Richard's poetic imagery so compelling. For instance, I loved his implicit suggestion that our song really is the essence of our soul. And just like a bird in flight, our life song soars in ever-closing circles above this beautiful yet damaged earth until it finally comes to rest on the uplifted arm of the waiting Christ, the divine Falconer. So these were the words I decided to share with my friends at Third Reformed Church, words of comfort, hope, and promise. Once the decision was made, the music for both the anthem and the hymn tune on which it would be based came to me very quickly, almost spontaneously. This was one of those all too rare occasions when I sensed that the music was flowing through me rather than from me. I almost couldn't write the notes down quickly enough. I named the hymn tune The Falconer. By the way, I prefer the pronunciation Falconer. It sings better. From a formal standpoint, The Falconer is the simplest of hymn tunes, with just two short phrases, each of which is repeated, A-A-B-B. My wife, Susan, my partner in both life and music, will sing the hymn for you, and I invite you to sing along as you are able. To introduce the hymn, I'll play the opening bars of the choral arrangement, and will also play the final stanza's harmonization from the anthem. And now, The Falconer.
Rise, my song, and stretch your wings, delight and need to trace. Rise for those the gospel brings, to seek a singing place. This will be a singing day, word and tune will both be true. Songs are up, but not away, the Falconer waits for you. Rise, my song, and have no fear of soaring wide and high. Christ the Falconer is near, wherever you may fly. See the human moonbeam
Now we will have a sequence of hymns on the life of Jesus. The first is another being republished in its original form. It's called, O Christ, We Sing the Shoreline. It is a hymn on Jesus' call of his first disciples, and it was written as a commission to David Ashley White and me for St. Andrew by the Sea, a community church in Gulf Shores, Alabama. The original version included that church's name in the closing lines, and I prepared a general version afterward. Here's the first stanza. O Christ, we sing the shoreline you walked in Galilee, where earth was meeting heaven, as land was meeting sea. The four who heard you calling would leave their nets behind to fish for people, casting nets of another kind. Now let's listen.
O Christ, we sing the shoreline you walked in Galilee, where earth was meeting heaven as land was meeting sea. The four who heard you calling would leave their nets behind to fish for people, casting nets of another kind. The net of grace and gospel does not exclude a soul. It is a net of welcome, embracing one and all. So wide, so strongly woven of hope and memory, a net to gather people, to bind and set them free. The sea comes to the shoreline with lap and rush of waves. The sound as earth meets heaven may be a shout of praise, or clamor of the voices that cry to God alone. Yet at the final meeting, the sound is joyful song. O Christ, this is the shoreline you walked in Galilee. Here earth is meeting heaven as land that meets a sea. We follow when you call us, and earth by heaven is graced, until just past our vision the shoreline is erased.
O Christ, We Sing the Shoreline is in David's book, Songs for a New Creation, and it is the title piece of a book of mine, We Sing the Shoreline. This new book, Soul Becomes a Song, will have an index of previous publications. In the fall of 2019, Patrick Michaels invited me to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to lead a festival of hymns with my words and his music. It went very well. It was all recorded, and we will have two of the hymns from that festival now. These two have been in print before this with different music. The first is, "Oh, the Angels Did Bow Down." I wrote it when David Scott and I were editing a collection of hymns on the theme of angels. The collection was published by Selah as "Hear the Angels Sing." My words are partly adapted from an African-American spiritual, and they appeared in that Selah collection with music by Amanda Husberg. In the first stanza, you'll hear that the angels at the cross of Jesus hang up their harps and refuse to sing in the same way the exiles in Babylon did in Psalm 137. The second stanza tells of angels meeting women at Jesus' empty tomb. The third stanza picks up Jesus' words about the coming of the Son of Man, when there are signs in the heavens and the angels gather the elect. The text begins with a refrain that then follows each stanza. The hymn can be sung in Holy Week, in Advent, on a day whose theme is angels, and at any time an apocalyptic mood is called for. Here it is with Pat's music, sung by soloist and congregation at the festival last fall. Next, from that festival is How Can It Be the Life of Jesus? I wrote this in the 1990s, and the earlier setting was by Sally Ann Morris. The theme is the mustard seed parable, in which Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven to the tiny seed from which a great plant grows, a plant in which the birds of the air find shelter. Since the kingdom comes to us in Jesus, the hymn takes Jesus' own life, death, and resurrection to be that seed in a question and answer format. Now we have a hymn for Palm Passion Sunday, a hymn telling the story of Jesus riding into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey. Luke's account says, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' say, 'The Lord needs it.'" Jesus rides the donkey colt, and people shout Hosanna and spread their cloaks on the ground in front of him. My text tells the story from the point of view of the donkey, in dialogue with Jesus. And here's how it goes. "I'm no more than a colt," says the donkey bearing Jesus. "Yet I have chosen you," says Jesus on its back. "A king upon a colt? says the donkey bearing Jesus. A king who comes in peace, says Jesus on its back. These coats are not for me, says the donkey bearing Jesus. Yet you may walk on them, says Jesus on its back. I'll always carry you, says the donkey bearing Jesus. I must go on alone, says Jesus on its back. And will you think of me, says the donkey bearing Jesus. I will remember you, says Jesus on its back. That text is in print in my collected hymn texts, the book titled Tuned for Your Sake. There is an art song setting by William Vollinger, and Andrew Donaldson has provided a congregational song setting.
I'm no more than a colt, says the donkey bearing Jesus.
Yet I have chosen you, says Jesus on its
A king upon a colt, says the donkey bearing Jesus.
A king who comes in peace, says Jesus on its
These coats are not for me, says the donkey bearing Jesus.
Yet you may walk on them, says Jesus on its
I'll always carry you, says the donkey bearing Jesus.
I must go on alone, says Jesus on its
And will you think of me, says the donkey bearing Jesus.
I will remember you, says Jesus on its
I have two more pieces to present with music. The collection includes 15 hymns that come directly from Psalms, including popular Psalms, less popular Psalms, and one Psalm that is not in the lectionary. I will read you the text of a hymn on Psalm 120, which focuses on the line, "Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace." When I speak of peace, I hear the answer come, "It is time for war, yet this is a lie. I have lived too long among those who love war. What to do with those who repeat this lie? I would put the taste of war upon their tongues. It is pain and fire, nothing good or sweet. Save me, Holy One, from lies that lead to war. It is time for peace. Listen to my cry." That text is in the book in 3 settings by Maggie Tucker, Amanda Husberg, and Patrick Michaels. And now here is a hymn on what may be the most popular psalm of all, the 23rd. I have lost count of the number of versions of Psalm 23 I have written myself. As familiar as it is always able to be new. I wrote this version at the request of Amanda Husberg, to have a hymn to enter in the annual Psalm Song Contest of Church of the Shepherd in Grand Rapids. We did not win, but we received an honorable mention. There are many ways to hear the 23rd Psalm. It can be heard as a calm profession of faith. I shall not want. It can be heard as a statement of defiance aimed at the world's false shepherds. The Lord is my shepherd. The text I wrote for Amanda hears it as a celebration of a shepherd who is like no other, and of all the care that shepherd gives us. I will close with Amanda's setting of the collection's title piece, As Her Soul Becomes a Song.
As our soul becomes a song, Mary sings, Mary sings. As our soul becomes
There are 33 different hymn texts in this collection. Some have more than one setting, for a total of 38 hymns. 5 are appearing with their original settings. The rest are new texts with new settings, or texts already in print, appearing with new music. The book will have extensive indexes, including theme and lectionary references. I want to express my warmest thanks, first of all, to Andrew and Wendy Donaldson, to Al and Sue Fedak, and to David Scott, my publisher, for contributing to this online sectional during the COVID-19 pandemic with all of its restrictions. Thanks to Pat Michaels for his music and his hospitality last fall. Thank you to all who composed music specifically for this collection: Andrew Donaldson, Amanda Husberg, Patrick Michaels, Maggie Tucker, and David Ashley White. Thanks to Tamara Marson Ryan, the soloist of Oh the Angels Did Bow Down, and to Maggie Kairos, the soloist of How Can It Be, The Life of Jesus. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Peace be with you.